Hey kiddies, it's Terrible Triple Feature time once again, and this week Robert Vaughn gets outsmarted by idiots. Alright, we're going to be looking at 3 Robert Vaughn movies in which he is just completely outclassed and beaten by, morons. It's just weird because Robert Vaughn is a classic actor of TV and movies. He's just wonderful and always really he's a good go-to erudite elitist scuzzbucket, which is weird because he was one of the Magnificent Seven, and if you're part of the Magnificent Seven, you're sort of a hero forever, except for him. Which, granted, he was one of the more. They were all mercenaries in the Magnificent Seven, but he was kind of really money hungry. Or actually, no, that was Brad Dexter. That's weird. I guess he just comes off that way. But he's just wonderful every time. I've loved him since Superman 3 is probably the first time I saw him. And I can't bring myself to hate Superman 3. I know I should, but I just don't. But that's not what this one's about. This one is about the late 90s and early aughts in which Robert was just in a whole bunch of movies surrounded by nincompoops that were always getting the better of him. It's a good comedy triple feature for those of us who are, getting ready for October and nothing but horror movies. It's good to, really cleanse the palate with, happy-go-lucky fun stuff. So our menu is going to include Joe's Apartment, Pootie, Tang, Sine, Piddy on the Runny, Kine, and BASEketball. Yeah, I spent money on Joe's Apartment, $6. Now it's in my DVD collection forever. Joe's Apartment, touted as the first feature film by the Music Television Network, based on an old Liquid Television sketch of the same name, Joe's Apartment, in which Joe, in the movie version played by the always delightful Jerry O'Connell, is new to New York and living in an apartment with about a gajillion cockroaches that talk, but more importantly, sing. He is trying to woo Megan Ward, playing Lily, and her father is actually, it's weird because there's not a bad guy in the traditional sense. There are antagonists, but they don't really seem to be, much of a concern through about 90% of the movie. There are these 2 goons that are trying to get everybody out of the rent-controlled building that Joe is living in, and they are indirectly being employed by Robert Vaughn, who is playing a senator / father of Megan Ward's Lily. He wants to demolish the building so he can put up a new jailhouse. Lily wants to keep the lot open as a nice little botanical garden for the worst neighborhood in New York, and Joe just really wants a job and to get into Lily's pants. And in the middle of all this are cockroaches, and I can't bring myself to hate this movie. I watched it this morning. It's still a lot of fun because for a lot of different reasons, not the least of which, this movie is not afraid to be disgusting. It is really, really gross, and they don't shy away from the cockroaches. They don't really, they look cleaner, I think more as a result of it being early mid-90s CGI as opposed to any effort to make them not look cockroachy or make them look more photogenic, because they're still pretty disgusting looking. And they're dancing around and they're eating and they're singing, and I really just love all the tunes. It's very, very strange. But Robert Vaughn's there, and he is sort of the bad guy. He's got a lot of white hair in this one, which is going to be important as the triple feature progresses. And seems to be sporting somewhat of a deviant lifestyle. He seems to like wearing women's underwear. It's just kind of weird. He is not in the movie that much. We'll be going in increasing order of importance to the film and or screen time. And so the movie really is dominated by Joe and Joe's singing and dancing cockroaches. I gotta tell you, if you are in the mood for singing and dancing cockroaches, there really is no other movie to watch than Joe's Apartment, which has Robert Vaughn. Oddly enough, failed miserably at the box office, and is not even that much of a cult classic in terms of actually having a cult, but I still like it, so you can go to hell. It's my video series. Then again, Joe's Apartment was just not that popular, but nobody really cares. This one, I think, has out and out been hated by a lot of people. Pootie, Tang, Sine, Piddy on the Runny, Kine, Based on the sketch from this Chris Rock show, Pootie Tang, starring Lawrence Crawler as Pootie Tang. I say Pootie Tang more times in this 30 seconds, possibly. Written and directed by Louis C.K. Again, you people failed him. You weren't there for him back in the day. It's a parody of blaxploitation films, and as any good blaxploitation film, needs a scary old white guy as your bad guy. This time, Robert Vaughn, who still has white roots, but he is dyeing his hair jet black. It's kind of really silly looking because it just looks very, very fake. And he is not, I would say he's about in this movie as much as he's in Joe's Apartment, but he is just a lot more memorable and evil, and he gets to swing around the belt, and he's running Irene, the scariest, baddest hoochie mama on the planet Earth. Unabashedly adore Pootie Tang. I think this film is a scream. I watched it last night. It is nothing but funny, this movie, and yet people didn't like it. I don't get it. We also have Bob Costas. There's a lot of, you get the feeling that HBO had its hand in producing this film, not just because it's based on Chris Rock, but there's a lot of people that are on HBO floating around this movie, like David Tell, David Cross, and Bob Costas, who is on Inside the NFL and possibly does stuff with Real Sports. I don't care, because A, it's sports, and B, it's Bob Costas. But it keeps coming back to an interview framing device with Pootie Tang and Bob Costas, and Bob is kind of amusing. Again, this will be important in just a second when we get to our final film, BASEketball, which, you know, if you have to compare relative funniness, this is the funniest movie of the bunch, because you get the combined forces of the Zucker brothers with Matt Stone and Trey Parker of South Park. Just, it's sort of like a comedy supergroup. And it's a scream because you get all the really good Naked Gun, airplane type sight gag and or movie parodies, but with the mentality of Matt and Trey. Basically, it is the parody of every other sports movie in which, you know, the team has to overcome adversity. This time, the adversity is Robert Vaughn playing a guy. He's playing a rich guy. I forget what his name is. I'm not going to lie. I don't tend to memorize his character name in movies because just Robert Vaughn is playing this version of Robert Vaughn at this point. Hair is completely dyed black. Looks totally real. And he is trying to get Joe Airman Cooper, played by Matt Stone, the owner of the Milwaukee Beers, to sign a contract so that they can open up BASEketball to all the horrible merchandising and free agency that has ruined every other sport. But he's in the movie a lot more. He's very much directly the bad guy in the film, ruining Joe or Matt and Trey's plans at every turn and trying to, get everything so that he can make even more money than he already does. And he is just really, it looks like he's having a lot of fun. I think this was the 100th movie he'd ever made, and they had like a big party for him. Either that or a birthday, I forget which. BASEketball, I love this movie. It's just a scream, if only because it helped introduce me to Real Big Fish. So, Robert Vaughn, somehow getting outsmarted by morons at every turn, whether it be, Joe and his cockroaches, Pootie Tang, or Matt and Trey Parker in BASEketball. I will see you next week.